Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Gaurav Singh. I shall be your host for this masterclass, and I would like to welcome you all to Skill Up Online. And thank you very much for joining us. Before I hand over to Pravesh Kumar, our Microsoft certified trainer for today, I would like to give you a little introduction to Skill Up Online and explain what you have to look forward to over the next hour. Skill Up Online is a smart learning platform that goes beyond just certifications. Our aim is to enable learners to develop the deep subject matter expertise, soft skill, and practical experience a business need. Through a human-centered approach, we blend the best tools and curriculum online learning offers with mentor-based support. And in doing this, we have a proven track record in helping learners finish their training equipped with job-ready skills they can use straight away. So how do we do this? We seek to harness industry expertise and academic excellence through strategic collaboration and partnership. Example of these close relationships we have forged, including Microsoft, IBM, and Pacific Lutheran University in US. Through these collaborations, we offer deep learning in fast emerging technologies such as cloud, artificial intelligence, and data science. And of course, we enable learners to build critical competencies in cybersecurity, Dynamics 365, Power Platform, the modern workplace, and much more. So with that said, what we have got in the store for you today. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to Pravesh Kumar, our highly experienced trainer, who will guide you on how to create a virtual machine in Azure. Pravesh is a Microsoft certified trainer and Azure architect. He has 17 plus years of experience in analyzing information system needs, evaluating end user requirements, designing custom solutions, and troubleshooting complex information systems. He has trained over 1,000 Azure architects and has been conducting regular workshops on Windows servers, PowerShell, and Azure Cloud. Thus, he brings an invaluable depth of understanding of the real world challenges you face as IT professionals. For you today, Pravesh has planned an interesting and informative session with a demo on how to create and configure a virtual machine in Azure. During his session, please feel free to submit your question in the chat box, and I'll pick a selection of questions for him to answer towards the end of the session. So with that said, I shall now hand over to Pravesh. Over to you, Pravesh.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. Let me quickly share my screen. Yeah, hi guys. Good morning to all of you and welcome to this masterclass. I hope my screen is visible to you guys.
Yes, Pravesh. Yeah, it
Okay,
is visible.
thanks. Okay. Yeah, guys. So in this masterclass, as a cloud engineer, what is the main role we normally encounter that we need to create the virtual machines and we need to create the virtual machine skill sets or any other compute resources. So we'll discuss before going ahead, we'll discuss like what is the virtual machine. So we call it as a virtual machine, we call it as a virtual computer. That means a machine which is within a machine. That means in a physical computer, you can have multiple VMs. So it's not a physical computer, it's the emulation of a physical computer, maybe a laptop or maybe over a server where we can create multiple VMs. It has the same functionality like your physical server. You will find the CPU over there, but that is your virtual CPU, your memories, your virtual hard disk are there to store your data, and you can connect to any network with help of that. Now going ahead, as a Azure cloud engineer, I discussed that in this masterclass, we will be discussing about the kind of the VMs, what we can create at the same time, what are the prerequisites for creation of a VM, guys. So when we have to create a VM, what we need for a VM to, because the VM we have created, it needs to communicate with some other resource. So what we need the network over here. That means I need an IP address. So the IP address, from where the IP address comes, the IP address, it comes from some private network. So within Azure, you have your private network. And from the Azure terminology, what do we call it? We call it as a VNet, guys. That is my virtual network. Within a virtual network, what we create the subnets. Once you have your IP address, your all network component in place, then we have to create the VM, and during creation of the VM, we need to specify the name of the VM. I'll go through the demo after some time. So when you to create the name, when you to define the name of the virtual machine, we have to follow some best practices, some naming conventions. Every organization has the naming conventions based on their own requirement. But normally what we follow, that we say that what kind of the environment we have. Okay, so I'm assuming that my environment is dev environment. Okay. In which location you are creating your VM? So my location is East US. What is the role of the VM? I'll say that is my web VM. So that is my web server. And then we prefix like it's my web server 1, web server 2, web server 3, like this, guys. Define. Now, at the same time, when we have to say the in which location you want to create. So you all are aware that the Azure has their presence across the globe. There are 60+ regions where Azure has their data centers. If you talk about India, we have our data centers at 3 locations. That is your central India, that is Pune, Western India, that is Mumbai, and we have South India, that is Chennai. So we need to think of that from which location the users they are going to access your services. Take an example, if my users they are in Australia and they want to access your services where the servers are hosted in South India. So you'll always find that if they are accessing it from the Australia, there will be always a latency issue. Okay, the website will open slow, some issues will be there. So the customer is going to use our product if they are happy with our performance of the website. So we have to improve the user experience. So what we do for that, we always say that as a best practice, you should deploy your services near to the user. When we say near to the user, that means I should have deployed it in the any region which is in Australia, guys. So we specify the location. Now, when you have to specify a location, every location you'll find that we have different kind of the hardware. Because in some, let's take an example, Microsoft is building up a new data center in one of the region. So you'll find that they have the inventory of the hardware is not sufficient, or maybe the kind of the hardware they are using, they are still building it up. They are importing and they are building it up. But in another region, you'll find that they have different set of hardware. They have different set of services are available. So that will help us to understand that, okay, which kind of the service we want to use. If I show you guys, if you go to the status.azure.com, you'll find that these services differ from region to region, guys. If you look over here, that SAP HANA is available in East US, but that is not available in another regions. So this will differ from region to region. So when you have to plan your services, that time we also need to think of that, yes, what kind of the service you are going to build up, or maybe what kind of the VM size you are going to use, whether that is available there or not in that particular region. Now we discussed that we should locate our VMs near to the user so that you can improve their user experience and to meet any compliance requirement. Like take an example, if you talk about the GDPR regulation, guys, every country has their own privacy laws, and that privacy law says that our data should not be stored in different location. If you talk about India, we have Aadhaar card number. So Government of India, they have the amended that the Aadhaar card information of the users, it can only be stored in our region. That means it can be stored only in India. So a company who is their company, like say they have based out of US or some other location, but they are forced to meet this compliance requirement that data should be stored in the India. So we all this plan before creation of a VM, and based on that requirement, we create the VM. At the same time, the pricing. We all know that we are moving to the cloud to save on the cost. But how can we save on the cost? If you provision a big size VM which is not required, you are not saving the cost. So we have to plan it carefully. Now the compute cost, what happens? It differs from region to region. If I show you guys, if you go to the Azure pricing calculator, let me quickly see. And I take an example that I want to create a VM. So I'll select VM. I'll select, go to that VM, and I need to create 500 VMs, guys. My VMs will be running 24/7, and I'll keep the size that okay, the size of my VM will be 8 core CPUs and 32 GB RAM. My operating system is Windows, and if you look at the region, my region is West US, guys. So this is the cost, $297,840. So we planned it, but the moment you say that in the East US, if I want to deploy the same in the East US, I'm saving $20,000 per month. So you have to plan on basis of that. If your organization, they want to save on the cost, then you can create the resources in a region where the cost is very less. Same applies to our disk. That what kind of the storage you are going to use in your VM, whether it is a HDD, it is SSD or the premium SSD. So let me do one thing quickly. Go through a demo or walkthrough where I'm going to create a VM, guys. So I logged into my Azure subscription. So I want to create a VM, guys. So I'll say that virtual machine, and let me select the virtual machine. Then I'll say that okay, which subscription it is, which resource group you want to use. So we all know that resource group is to logically organize all of your resources. So whenever you have to create any service, any resource in Azure, it should be a part of one resource group. So I'm simply going to use the resource group today. What is the name of the VM? So like the best practice for the naming convention we discussed, I will say it belongs to my dev environment. Location is East US, and it is my web VM 07. In which region you want to create a VM? I'll say I want to create the VM into the East US region. Do we have any kind of the availability option, guys? So you will find that there are 3 availability options. One is availability zone. So what happens? Azure, in their regions, take an example. This is one of the region. That is our East US region. Within this region, they have their different zones. So minimum, when they plan it, minimum 3 zones will be there. So that means within a city, these data centers, every zone has got data centers, guys. Multiple data centers over here. So they plan that within that city, where that in that region, like they plan that these zones these data centers are not located nearby to each other. There should be at least 10, what they try that at least 10 miles of distance should be there. And every data center, every zone has their own independent power source. They have their independent network connectivity. They have tied up with a lot of ISPs and the network connectivity. So what is the advantage? If take an example, there is any disaster. So disaster means one of the region, there is a flood in that particular zone. In that, you might have seen that, guys, during any disaster or any flood happens. So one of the part of the city is most affected. So if anything goes wrong over here, maybe any plant maintenance activity, that time what we do, our services should be available from different zone. So this is how the availability zones are being planned. Another option what you guys will find over here, that is availability set. So what is the availability set? That means my VM, whatever VMs we are creating, they will be distributed across the different tracks within a data center. So we are discussing about the zone. So I'm assuming that, let me erase it. And I say that this is my region. And within this region, I have a zone. And in zone, we have data centers, guys. Okay, so I'm assuming that this is one of my data center and this is my zone. Okay, now in this data center, you'll find that you have different racks, the server racks, where the servers are hosted. So when you choose a availability set, what will happen up if I say that I have a requirement that I'm deploying a 3-tier application, that is my web tier, my application tier, and my DB tier. So for the web tier, I need to deploy the 10 VMs. So what we do, we create a availability set. So it is going to ensure that all these VMs will be created in the same data center and they will be distributed across the different racks. So what will happen if there is a problem with this rack? Automatically my VM is available from another racks. So we plan it for that. So the advantage is that all the VMs will be deployed in the same data center to overcome any kind of the latency issue. And in case of any unplanned maintenance activity or any planned maintenance activity, my services will be available, guys. Okay. So in our case, we are not going to discuss about it. I'm not going to configuring it. So we'll select, okay, which VM you want to create. I say that I want to create 2019 data center. Now, what is the size of your VM? So you'll find that Azure has different size of the VMs. Some VMs, they belong to general purpose family. If you look at any other, if you look at the E series, they are memory optimized. So we normally use these for our workloads like SQL Server. So SQL Server consume a lot of memory. So we use the memory optimized VMs at that point of time. And we select, okay, which VM you want to create. This is this series, and I'll say that, okay, it will have 2 core CPU, 16 GB RAM, how many data disk it supports, what is the IOPS for that, guys, and what is the cost associated with that. So in our case, we are going to use the same VM. What is there? D2S V3. Okay, and this is the monthly cost associated with this, guys. So I'll select it. Now we need to create a user and the password. Then we specify that who can connect over the internet, which ports you want to open. So I can take RDP of this server. I can also connect. I can access the website of this server. I'll select it. And you can change these settings later on also, guys. Click on next disk. And now what kind of the disk you are looking for that. So you guys need to understand that every type of the disk has their own the code, there's a cost difference in that, and the performance will differ from that. If you feel that we are using some production based workload, use the premium disk. Else we can use the standard SSDs or standard HDD guys. So in most of the cases, what we use the premium SSD, especially for operating system disk. But if you want to save on that, if you want to add a data disk, and then you can say that, okay, I want to use standard HDD because here only my data is being copied. And we can add the data, different data disk over here. Click on networking. Then we can specify which VNet you want to use. So in my case, there is no VNet existing, so it will automatically create a new VNet. What is the IP address, space, and that is my subnet of it. I also want to use the public IP address so that I can access it over the internet. We can use the public IP address, guys. Then we specify that do you want to log in with Azure AD? We can configure the auto shutdown. We can configure the backup. We can configure the disaster recovery as per our requirement. So these all features are there, and we can configure it at the later stage also, guys. So the backup is what the backup you can take only once in a day. Disaster site recovery is nothing. It is your replication. So that is Azure site recovery. So what happens? The replication of your VM is happening 24/7, guys. Okay. So normally what happens? There will be a RPO for it. And that is of 15 minutes, the way you want to define it, guys. At the same time, if you have a requirement that you want to install some application, once your VM gets provisioned, I need to install some role on top of it, IIS role. I need to install some antivirus. I need to install some other application. So we can use the extensions. So these extensions we normally use for our post deployment configuration and some kind of the automation, guys. So what we are going to use, I'm not making any changes to that, and let me quickly create it. And I will say that my environment is development. Owner is mine. So tags is as a best practice, guys. We should use the tagging. You should use the tags for tag. And let me review plus create it. So here we also need to understand this is the cost per hour. So if you are running your VM for 8 hours, you have to only pay for 8 hours. It doesn't mean that you have to pay for 24/7. And even though it's not the case that they are going to charge you for the full hour. If your VM has run only for 10 minutes, they are going to charge you only for 10 minutes, guys. So that's the reason the cloud are becoming so popular, because you have the flexibility. You are saving a lot on the cost. And you can create VMs. If I have a requirement comes that I want to create the 1,000 VMs, I can create within a click, within 5 minutes, your VMs will be ready. But if you are to perform the same thing on your own premises, you need to purchase the hardware, you need to configure the networking, storage, and there is a lot of overhead over there, guys. So it will take some 4 or 5 minutes for creation. We'll revisit it, guys. We already discussed about the storage, like for the virtual machine, what kind of the storage should you plan? So we discussed that every VM will have minimum 2 disks, and it can have more disk also. The more disk means that more disk will be your data disk, guys. Okay. So one will be your operating system disk, and another will be your temporary disk. Okay. So that is my C drive, and this is my D drive, guys. So we need to understand this temporary disk. There is no SLA for this. If you restart your VM, the data may get lost, guys. So there is no guarantee that you will get your data. So we use this disk to store it. Is normally of 20 GB or 40 GB. It depends on the size also of your VM, which size you are using. And my operating system disk will be there. Apart from that, if I say that I have another requirement, I want to use some other drive like my F drive or G drive, there is a requirement, business requirement. So you guys can add on the disk as per the requirement. Same, the disk can be premium SSD, it can be standard SSD, it can be standard HDD. That is your magnetic disk, guys. Now, where your data resides when you create this disk. So we all have seen that in our on-premises environment, we use some kind of the storage area network, some storage devices. Same over here in the Microsoft, it stores it in the storage accounts, guys. So my disk are a part of the some blob service of a storage account. Now, who manages this blob storage? By default, if you choose the manage disk, that means the storage account where your application, your data, your disk is stored. That storage account is managed by Microsoft. But there may be a requirement for us that no, we want to have more control on that. I want to store it in my own storage account. That you can also do, guys, but that we call it as a unmanaged disk. So you have full control on that, but as a best practice, we use the managed disk. But if there is any specific business requirement, you can use the unmanaged disk, but the unmanaged disk always try to use for your data disk if requirement comes. Because now you are the one who is managing the storage account. If there is any permission issue or any latency issue, you are responsible for that. So you can't expect the Microsoft to provide you the SLA for that performance. But if you use the managed disk, they are responsible for that. So they always ensure that your disk is provisioned near to the VM, where the VM is provisioned. Okay, so how can we connect to a virtual machine, guys? We have three options. Either we can take a RDP protocol through the RDP remote desktop. So the remote desktop means the protocol which we use, that is my RDP protocol, and the port which we use 3389. We have another option that we want to connect to we have a Linux box or Linux VM, maybe Ubuntu, maybe Red Hat. So how can we connect to that? We normally use the SSH for that, guys, secure shell. And for the secure shell, we need to open the port 22, guys. Okay. And apart from that, what Azure also provides you, it provides you another option that called Bastion subnet, guys. So if I go to the portal and if I go to VM, so when you want to connect to your VM, you have three options over here. RDP, SSH, and Bastion. So why do we use the Bastion? So the advantage is that for the Bastion, I need not to open my port 3389. So you can provision the Bastion service. You have to pay for that service, but you will be able to access your data, your VMs over the browser, guys. So for a secure remote connectivity, we use the Bastion. But like say you want to make your environment more secure, yes, there is a cost associated with that. So as an organization, we take a call that, okay, do we want to use the Bastion or do we want to use any other solution for that? So in our demo, what I'm going to show you guys, I will be connecting to the RDP. So what I'm going to do, okay, let me select the RDP because it's a Windows VM. So I'll connect over the public IP address and I will download my RDP file. Let me download it. And let me open it up. It will ask me my credentials. And you'll find that you'll be able to log in into the VM, guys. And after logging into the VM, what we can do, we can install the service on top of it. So I'm going to install the IIS on top of it, guys. So let me click on our server manager. And then I need to install the role on top of it, guys. So my server manager is open. It will take some time. It's loading it, guys. Okay, now it's loaded, and I will say that, okay, add role and feature. I'll select my VM and I'll select that I want to install one of the role on top of it. Okay, let's take an example. Web server. Click on next. All the features and click on install. So it will take 2-3 minutes, and meantime my IIS role will get installed and we'll be accessing it from the outside, the default website. So this is what we have seen, that when we have to create a VM, a single VM, we can create like this. But what is the real requirement? Take an example, guys. We are using Ola cab service. Okay. So the Ola cab service, when the service is being used most. So you'll find that when the people they go to office, so it will be used from 8:30 to 10:30 in the morning extensively, and then in the evening from 5:30 to 6:30 when the people they come out, like say they come back from office. So that time they use it extensively. So for the other hours, like take an example, Ola is running their service from the 1,000 servers. But during these hours, they need 2,000 servers. So we are looking for a solution that if I need these servers, like say 2,000, 1,500 servers, only for 2 hours. So we should be able to scale it out only for 2 hours, so that I can save on the cost. If we keep on running these servers, they are underutilized. Nobody is using them. So we are looking for a solution that where if the requirement comes, my number of servers will increase and automatically the number of servers will decrease. So there are two types of the scaling we normally use. One scaling is vertical scaling, guys. And here the operation we call it is a scale up. So that means you increase the size. Example, if I say that I'm using 2 core CPU VM and I'm using 8 GB RAM. And now I want to make it 4 core and 16 GB RAM. So the operation what we are performing the scale up. We are increasing the resources of our existing. So my number of VMs will not increase, only the single VM you are increasing the size of that VM. But there is a problem with it, that it requires the restart. So there will be a downtime for your application. And same is the case for this. You will bring it down. That means from the 4 core to again 2 core. We call this process as a scale down, guys. The most popular is the horizontal. When we move our workload to cloud, we use the horizontal scaling. So horizontal scaling is that I have a VM. Now I need some user. So this VM, it can handle 100 users. Now my number of users, it has increased to 110. So the system itself is going to start one more VM, guys. So now I'm able to handle 200 simultaneous users. When the number of users increase from 200 to another, like say 220, 225, so it will automatically start the third VM. So the advantage is that you are automatically scaling out the resources to meet the user requirement, and then we scale in. So when it is not in use, they will scale it in. They will reduce it to number one, or whatever the minimum number of instances they are running. And that is what being used frequently by most of the organizations, guys. Depends. Scale up, vertical scaling we use in case of any SQL database workload. Because what happens in the SQL database, you can only write to one single server. The read operation can be across the different servers, but the write operation can be only to a single server. So I need to increase my size at some point of time. We use the vertical scaling in that case, guys. So what to meet this requirement, what Azure provides us? Azure provides us skill set. There is a service called over here virtual machine skill set, guys. We call it as a VMSS. So that means VMSS we use for what kind of the scaling, guys? Horizontal scaling. So automatically my VM instance will increase. So I was running 3 instances earlier. My requirement has increased. So let's take an example. My CPU usage is greater than 70%. This is the condition we have specified. If the CPU usage of all these VMs, it goes above 70%, start one more instance. Start one more instance. And when the user workload has decreased, it has come down, it will keep on bring it back to one instance, guys. Okay. So you are saving on the cost, you are meeting the user requirement, you are improving their user experience. Okay. So, and there is no pre-provisioning of that VMs is required, guys. Okay. And this process can be automated or it can be manual. Okay. So let me show you the demo for the same also. Before coming to this, let's quickly where we were left. The VM, in case of the VM, we are looking for that. Okay, we have installed the IIS role on top of that VM. So at this moment in my VM, the IIS is being installed, guys. Let me close it. So I want to verify that am I able to access it, the IIS service or not. So what I will be doing, I'll verify that whether the IIS website is running or not. So I'll go to IIS manager. And now over here, I can verify that yes, my website is running. Okay, so this is the default website, guys. And the same website, are you able to access it from outside? Let's. Sorry, guys. So I'll say that I have this is my public IP address, and let's try accessing it, guys. The website is accessible from the outside. You can change it the way you want to change it using the different means, like say nowadays you follow the DevOps methodology to deploy applications to your websites to the web servers, IIS. You can use any means to deploy application, and the users, they will have access to it, guys. So that was for the VM. We are discussing about the virtual machine skill set, guys. So if I look at this, when you have to create a virtual machine skill set, guys, the process remains the same. I'll select my existing resource group. I'll give it a name, dev-east-us-web VMSS. Are you looking? Okay, the same reason. How do you want to orchestrate? I'll keep it default. Okay, this is my VM size. Let me specify. I'll use the disk. The process remains the same, guys. The VNet. I'll use the VNet what is available over here. Now the scaling, you can say that what should be the initial count. I will say my initial count should be 1. And now how you want to scale this. So we have the manual scaling option. We have the custom scaling option, where we can say that we can write the rules that when my CPU usage is greater than 75%, my VM will increase. So the VM will increase by number 1. When it will scale in, when the CPU usage has come down to say 25%, it will start decreasing it. So in my case, I just want to use the manual, guys. I'll keep the default settings over here. And now by default, what happens, guys, you can create the VMs thus in the skill set up to 100 instance. But if you want to create more than this, a virtual machine skill set, it supports up to 1000 VMs. That means in a VMSS, you can create up to 1000 VMs, guys. Okay. So basically what happens, you have to enable this option. Okay, yes, my skill set can go up to 1000 VMs, we can do that. So 1000 VMs is the limit for the images which are provided by Microsoft. That is your VM image. But if you are using your custom image, the limit is 600, guys, which is more than enough. And we can create different virtual machine skill sets. I'll define it. And as a best practice, like we discussed, we will define our environment, which is development. I'll specify the owner and scale up, and let me review plus create, guys. So it is going to take some time for creation of this VMSS, and then we'll revisit it, guys. So we have discussed about the virtual machine skill sets. So meantime, we'll start our discussion that the VMSS gets created. We'll start our discussion that why the AG104 is required to start your Azure journey, which is going to help you in your career. If you have that skill sets, you can easily, like say, get a job, or maybe you can plan you can switch to another job, or you can upskill yourself within your organization. So in AG104, what we normally discuss, these are, it contains the 11 modules. And in all these modules, we discuss different components of Azure, which as a administrator, as a cloud engineer, we have to deal with. So in the module 1, we'll discuss about the identity. So the identity means what we are using. We are using Azure Active Directory, guys. How can we create users? How can we implement this multi-factor authentication for them? Groups, conditional access policies. How can we sync our identities from on-premises to Azure Active Directory? We discuss in module 1. In the module 2, we discuss about the governance and the compliance. As an organization, we have some policies that we want to disable the creation of resources from one of the region, like say East US. So you can create a policy and implement it so that the resources can only be created in a specific region to meet any compliance requirement. Module 3 will discuss about the Azure administration, like where we discuss how can we manage the Azure resources. So we have the options we discuss about the Azure portal, PowerShell, CLI, ARM templates. Module 4, 5, and 6, we discuss all the components which are required for the networking. So how to create your own private network, how to configure the connectivity between your on-premises site and Azure. So we use the site-to-site connections. We create the VPN gateways, that is, we call it virtual network gateway from Azure perspective. VNet peering within Azure VNets, how you are going to configure the communication. And we discuss about the different type of the load balancing solutions in module 6, guys. Then we have module 7. In the module 7, we discuss about the Azure storage, which is platform as a service offering by Azure, where you can store your data instead of managing your VM or any other solution. So like say we can use the storage accounts like the blob storage where you can upload your files. Take an example, take an example of Netflix. So where they are storing their media files. So they are using some kind of the storage in the background, and from there they are playing it. They are streaming it. So we have the blob storage, we have the Azure files as a file share. How can we sync our data from on-premises to Azure storage account? We discuss about it, guys. Module 8 is about the Azure virtual machines, what we have discussed now, but we are going to discuss more in depth at that point of time. Module 9, we discuss about the platform as a service offering, like we have Azure App Service, we have the Azure Container Instance, the Kubernetes, and followed by module 10 and 11, where we'll discuss about the data protection. We discuss about the monitoring. That is the best. When we talk about the career path, how do we start? We normally start with the AG104, which is a 4 days of training. And you can start working as a cloud engineer somewhere. You'll get I can say the more understanding about the Azure cloud over here, the various components, the services provided by Azure. After that, what we have to do, the next path is our Azure Solution Architect. So for Azure Solution Architect, the exam is AG305, but the prerequisite is AG104, guys. So at the end of the day, if you want to become a solution architect, the 104 needs to be done. That is there. And in the AG305, we discuss more about the best practices and the designing, guys. If you want to build your career as a DevOps engineer, so Microsoft has their exam for that AG400. But again, here the prerequisite is AG104. That is there. Same goes with your Azure security engineer. If you are from the SOC background or any security background, you guys can use them. But AG104, guys, you'll find that it is going to help you in any specialty if you want to go or you want to become a solution architect. So in the AG500, what we learn about the security, how can we protect our workloads? Same in AG140, we discuss about the VDI solution, that is Azure Virtual Desktop. The organizations, they are using the Citrix, they are using the VMware Horizon. It depends on that. So we discuss about the VDI solution provided by Azure, that is Azure Virtual Desktop. So we have to undergo, like say, it opens the gate for us, AG104. Once you have undergone this training, you'll get a better understanding about the cloud. And once you gain some experience with that, now you guys can undergo the solution architect, you can become a DevOps engineer, security engineer, and virtual desktops also, guys. Over to you, Goro.
Thank you, Pravesh, for this wonderful session. Now I'll be sharing my screen again. Please confirm, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Goro.
Okay, thank you. Now, as promised, it's time to talk about the courseways that comes with attending this masterclass. Please keep an eye on this email address you have shared with us to attend today. You will receive an email from skillpipe.com with your license key. To access the courseways, you will simply need to follow the instruction provided in the email. Also, I recommend you to watch your inbox for any email from us in a week's time. This will carry the details of how to download your certificate of participation and enable you to access the recording link of today's masterclass. Just before we pick up the question, Parvesh, I've got one more thing to ask of you. We would highly appreciate your thoughts about today's session. So please, can you check the chat window for a link to our feedback form and complete it now? I'll just take 2 minutes of pause so that you can complete the feedback form and give your insight about the session you have had today. The feedback form has been posted in the chat. Please take your 2 minutes to fill in the feedback form. Okay, I hope you have all filled the feedback form. Now let's move on to the next section. Just before, okay, now let's move quickly towards the question for Pravesh that you have shared in the chat window during the session. Yeah, I have few question in the chat box, Pravesh. First question, which is asked by Pranjal, what is the difference between disaster recovery and ASR?
Yeah, Pranjal, thanks for your question. So disaster recovery is what, like, as an organization, we always have a strategy that how we are going to protect our workloads in case of a disaster happens. Take an example, some kind of the major disaster like a flood has happened or any kind of the power failure or any other kind that major disaster. So if you talk about the current, the Russia and Ukraine situation, so there is a disaster going on. So if the Microsoft, they are providing their services from the Russia or the Ukraine region, that services are being impacted. So that is a major disaster. So how do you plan that my services are available from another region? Else it is going to, there will be a lot of business loss in that case. So that is the disaster recovery. Now to meet that disaster recovery, what we do, we have different requirements. Like say, take an example, we want to take backup. So I can restore my data in that scenario and I can rebuild my services. But that restoring the data from the backup is going to take some time. It may take 8 hours, it may take 10 hours. It totally depends on the kind of the data you are backing up or the size of the data which you want to restore. So ASR, what is the Azure Site Recovery? It enables the replication, that is my data is being continuously replicating from one region to another region. So in the advantage is that if there is some issue with one of the region, my services will be available with the less downtime from another region. So if my VM is running in East US, I'm also replicating it to the West US region. So there is a issue with the East US region, my service will be available from the West US region, and we keep these VMs behind the load, behind traffic manager or maybe front door guy.
Okay, now we have another question also. Why VM extension are used in Azure?
Okay, like during my demo, I showed I shown you guys that there is a requirement that when I provision my VM, after the provisioning of the VM, we need to install the antivirus. We need to install the some kind of the role like say IIS. In our demo, what we have done, we have logged in into the VM and we have installed the IIS role. Whereas I want that it should happen automatically. So that is where the virtual machine extensions are going to help me. So any post deployment activity you guys want to perform, we use the VM extension for that.
Thank you, Pravesh, for providing those valuable answers. It's been an interesting session, and I would like to thank everyone for attending today. I hope you have found this masterclass useful. We have certainly enjoyed having the opportunity to update you on the process of creating a virtual machine in Azure. It's a much needed skill in the world of cloud computing. Don't forget to check your email accounts for the details on how to download the certificate of participation. Plus, access the recording link, and of course, you will also see the details again of our not to be missed discounts offer. Thank you, Pravesh, and thank you, everyone. And if you'd like to find out more about our Microsoft courses, or if you have any other queries or training, you can connect us at contact@skillup.online. This is the email ID mentioned on the screen. You can connect with us on this email if you have any queries in the future.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today.